In the quiet valleys of the Himalayas, where breath becomes wind and the mountain whispers, "No, no end," there exists a sacred text unlike any other, a guidebook not for the living, but for the dead. In these lofty, silent expanses, where the air shimmers with the light of countless ancient prayers, every stone and every gust of wind seems to murmur the secrets of the ages. They call it Bardo Thödol, the liberation through hearing in the intermediate state. Yet beyond this simple title lies a world of mystery, a text born not only out of the yearning to understand death, but also out of the deep human desire to see what lies beyond the ephemeral mask of life. Known to the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this work defies the usual expectations of a book. It is not merely ink on paper, it is a living mirror held up to the soul in its most fragile and luminous moment, when the illusions of everyday existence have evaporated and the eternal vastness beyond glows revealed in its pure, unblemished light. This is not a story of endings, but rather a map for the in-between, a cartography of consciousness, and a handbook for the travelers of the unseen realms. It speaks not only to the process of dying, but to the very act of becoming, the constant transformation that colors every moment of existence. Bardo, a simple word that means transition, interval, or that which lies between. From the Tibetan vantage, death is no abrupt severance, a hard wall that cuts one off from life, but a corridor, an unfolding process of deep awareness. Like the shifting phases of a dream, the bardos reveal themselves gradually, each stage a subtle invitation to peer ever more deeply into the nature of reality. Legend has it that the Bardo Thödol was first whispered into being by the eminent Padmasambhava, the lotus-born guru, in the 8th century. It is said that rather than writing it with ink, he imprinted it with light and spirit, a hidden treasure text, or terma, meant to be discovered only when the world was finally ready to remember its own forgotten truths. This sacred wisdom was not simply placed in a vault or buried beneath layers of soil. Instead, it was hidden within the very flow of time, encoded in the tapestry of existence itself. Centuries passed, and the world turned. At long intervals, destined by fate, the text revealed itself once again, found by enlightened souls known as tertones, treasure finders stirred by visions, dreams, and karmic resonance. These spiritual seekers uncovered the precious teachings, transmitting them faithfully through the ancient Nyingma lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. Recited not only at the bedside of the dying, but murmured into the ears of those who had already begun their final journey, the text guided wandering consciousness through the shifting shadows of life towards the ever-present possibility of awakening. To read the Bardo Thödol is to embark on a dual pilgrimage, one that explores the mysteries of death and by doing so, prepares the living for the ultimate liberation. The Tibetans understood that to die well is to live well, that every moment holds within it the seeds of its own transformation. Death, in their view, is not a break in the continuity of existence, but rather a continuation, a doorway to the next great unfolding. The text describes 3 primary bardos of death, each a progressively subtler and more profound passage on the journey of the soul. First, the Chikai Bardo, the moment of dying. In the first, transient threshold, when the final breath is drawn, the clear light of the Absolute erupts forth like a silent revelation. This is the moment of dying, when the raw essence of awareness, formless yet all-encompassing, becomes palpable. It is not a light seen by the eyes, but a knowing felt deep within, a purity and boundless awareness that defies all description. If one recognizes this blinding illumination, liberation can become immediate. Yet most souls, unprepared and clinging desperately to the comforting confines of the ego, recoil from this overwhelming unity. They remain tethered to the familiar fragments of separation, and thus the journey through the bardos continues. Next, the Chonyid Bardo. The experience of reality following the initial encounter comes the Chonyid Bardo, where the traveler is bathed in a myriad of visions, both divine and terrifying. Here arise peaceful deities with serene, compassionate faces, and also wrathful beings adorned with flames for hair and wielding skull-like instruments. These figures are not to be interpreted as gods in the conventional sense. Rather, they are vivid mirrors of the mind, projections arising from karmic imprints and the deep recesses of the unconscious. Their forms, sounds, and radiant colors are symbolic manifestations of our innermost truths and delusions. To see them and recognize that they are nothing more than reflections, consciousness attempting, in that ephemeral moment, to behold its own nature, is to step closer to freedom. But if terror obscures this insight, the traveler plunges into deeper confusion, becoming ensnared by the inertia of fear and desire. Then, the Sidpa Bardo, the transition into rebirth. After traversing the realm of vivid visions, the soul enters the Sidpa Bardo, where the insistent pull of karma makes itself known. Here, the forces of past actions and latent cravings begin to coalesce, compelling the spirit to seek a new form, a new womb in which to be reborn. The light of desire takes on the weight of gravity, and images of one's parents and ancestral ties emerge as potent symbols of identity. In this critical phase, the soul is drawn, often inexorably, toward the familiar contours of a next existence, marking the turning of the cosmic wheel once more and perpetuating the ceaseless cycle of samsara. This eternal wandering, the infinite oscillation between birth and death, form and formlessness, is not a curse, but an invitation. Liberation is possible at every juncture, though so too is the comforting delusion of habitual forgetfulness. We forget not purely through ignorance, but by the repeated motion of conditioned patterns, clinging to what feels safe even as we drift away from truth. Yet the Tibetan Book of the Dead is not a text of despair or resignation. It is, in essence, a blazing torch, a reminder that even in the darkest corridors of our inner world, a door always awaits. In every moment of dissolution, there is the spark of choice. In every shadow of oblivion, a latent mirror reflecting back our inherent brilliance. It teaches us that what we often shudder at, the demonic images and oppressive silhouettes, are merely distortions of our own attachments. The only true hell is the failure to recognize oneself in the fleeting dance of light and shadow. For the uninitiated, the text might seem strange, nearly surreal, a series of symbols and fantastical beings, rainbow bodies, entities formed of pure sound and radiant color, and fearsome judgment deities brandishing instruments of celestial fire. Yet behind every such image lies a profound truth. Every soul must pass through successive layers of its own undoing. The collapse of the self is not the terminus, Rather, it is the grand unveiling of what has always been hidden. It is said that within the Chonyid Bardo, one may encounter as many as 42 peaceful deities and 58 wrathful ones. Each of these vibrant figures is both symbolic and archetypal, representing the psychological forces we grapple with in our most intimate moments. Tibetan sages envisioned these beings not simply as inventions of the imagination, but as dynamic, living metaphors, tools that, when recognized, burn away the veils of ego like flames consuming old paper. These deities materialize from a luminous void, each ascending upon their own lotus throne, radiating colors that speak to specific spiritual qualities. They carry implements that are as diverse as the qualities of the mind itself, presenting lessons to those who are ready to learn. Their presence is not to be feared. Instead, it is to be embraced as an invitation to dissolve the false self and awaken to a more radiant truth. When Western scholars first encountered this mysterious text through the work of figures like W.Y. Evans Wentz in the early 20th century, many dismissed it as myth or metaphor, a hallucinatory relic of a remote culture. Yet others perceived in it a mirror of the human psyche. Carl Jung, the great explorer of the unconscious, famously saw in its pages not a document of death, but a reflection of the process of individuation, the symbolic death of the ego and the emergence of the vast, eternal self. In Jung's eyes, the deities of the Bardo were not external forces, but manifestations of archetypes inscribed in the collective memory of humanity. In the turbulent 1960s, Timothy Leary and his contemporaries found in the Bardo Thödol a resonant echo of their own experiments with consciousness-altering substances. They mapped the psychedelic dissolution of self onto the ancient stages described in the text, arguing that modern man, too, might glimpse liberation if he could face the profound unknown with courage and clarity. Aldous Huxley, in his final days, even turned to these teachings, inviting the mystic spirit of the text into his own farewell, as his wife recited its verses while LSD subtly opened the doors between worlds. Today, modern science, too, has begun to find echoes of the bardos in the language of near-death experiences. Researchers report tunnels of light, life reviews that cascade in slow motion, and sensations of untethered consciousness. A reminder that perhaps the ancient wisdom of Tibet touches upon something universally real. We may be in the process of rediscovering what was always inherent in the fabric of existence. For Tibetan masters, however, the power of the Bardo Thödol lies not in abstract theology, but in lived experience. The teachings are not meant to be accepted on blind faith. They are to be verified by the practitioner. One does not need to believe in deities or reincarnation to gain from the insights offered. All that is required is a willingness to look inward, to sit in stillness, and watch as one's conditioned habits dissolve like mist under the first rays of dawn. In the practices of Tibetan yoga, practitioners might meditate in charnel grounds among the remnants of the once lived to confront the full reality of impermanence. They would envision their own eventual decay, see the petals of their existence scatter with the passing wind, and in doing so, unshackle themselves from the terror of loss. To die before dying, they taught, is to live without the heavy chains of fear and attachment. Even in contemporary monasteries, the ancient chants of the Bardo Thödol continue to echo over the silent forms of the dying and the departed. The resonant tones of bells, the intricate symbols traced in the air, and the whispered prayers all serve as final reminders to the soul. Awaken. The illusions that have obscured your true nature are falling away. The truth, luminous and unwavering, is closer than you think. Let us then dare to peer beyond our everyday reality. Let us listen to that ancient whisper, suspended across the ages, which calls to us from heights beyond time itself. When the body finally releases its grip and the mind drifts free like a leaf in a ceaseless wind, a voice will arise from deep within the infinite void of our own being. It will gently proclaim, "O child of the void, now the time has come for you to seek the light. Release your fears and let your attachments dissolve. You are not a merely transient body, nor are you confined to a single name or form. You are pure awareness, the eternal witness to the unfolding cosmos. And if, even for a single breath, you heed that call, if you dare to follow that faint but steady light, you will glimpse the liberation that lies at the very heart of existence. In that sacred moment, the cycle of beginnings and endings may cease, or perhaps it will commence anew, as it always has, and as it always will. For if death is a mirror, then life is but its rehearsal, a series of fleeting acts in an eternal drama where every end is but a gateway to a fresh beginning, and every departure serves as the prelude to an even greater arrival.